G'day fellas, and welcome to a tier list video. This is going to be the very first tier list that's happening after the most recent tournament, so that was a big major, the Winter Championship. I'm not going to spoil the results from that tournament, but we are going to be taking our results directly from that, or rather taking our tier list directly from that tournament. So I've got some statistics as well. We'll show those towards the end of the video and explain it a little bit more. But we're going to be doing things in a bit of a random order today. So instead of doing them all in one direction, we'll be doing it all over the place. But there is a brand new S tier civilization, and I can confirm it has never been S tier before. Incredibly exciting stuff. We'll talk more about that though as we move forward. But let's start off with, I guess, probably where most people would have expected one civilization, the Abbasid Dynasty. They are down in the D tier. They are unfortunately not the strongest civilization at the moment. A lot of civs just able to do things much better than they can do, and as a result, it just means that there's better civilizations to pick in the circumstances you see yourself in. No matter the map, no matter the matchup, you're always going to be better off picking another civilization. Unfortunately, the Abbasid Dynasty, just a little bit too slow in the current day and age, and even when they do get late game, not particularly strong. So that's why they sit in the D tier. Coming up from the D tier, we've got, I guess we can look at the A tier. We'll start off with the French. French are a civilization that have been affected quite negatively by the recent patch. Obviously, professional scouts was a big nerf to them. They lost a lot of power coming out of that, but as a result, it's meant that they've also been able to shift up in their power as well, because they've got access to knights in the second age, and it's meant that they're able to control the narrative when it comes to who gets to collect the deer and who doesn't get to collect the deer. We once see a return to this age 2 fighting beginning to happen, and that means the French are going to be very strong in that situation. Obviously, also incredibly good on water maps that you may find yourself on, Archipelago, Boulder Bay, Warring Islands, those sorts of things. Great choices there. And another great pick on those water maps is the Rus, which are also going to be up in the A tier as well. As you may have suspected, the Rus are another civilization that was adversely affected by that change with the professional scouts, but we've continued to see them be quite strong. They also got nerfed a lot in other areas, but we are seeing Rus players typically go for a more economic focused build order. We're seeing them go for 2-3 town centers once they stabilize themselves in the third age. So it is definitely, you know, we're seeing this more macro-orientated game happening, and they, I mean, together with the French, they've had quite a strong win rate against the other civilizations that are out there. But definitely, we see them still being strong, and the professional scouts nerf doesn't really look to have hit them too hard. The main difference with that professional scout nerf is just they're not going to be stealing your hunt first. They're going to be going for their own hunt and then thinking about stealing your hunt. So they'll get theirs first and then they'll come for yours. That's the main difference. Let's talk about the B tier, the next tier that we've got. We've got the first civilization, going to be the Chinese going into this. Chinese are a civilization that are a little bit more map dependent than these other two. So these two, pretty much, you can play them on any maps, whereas the Chinese, ideally you want to be playing them on maps that you are able to camp on. So maps like Mountain Pass, really, really good on those sorts of maps. Black Forest, really good civilization on that map as well. We've seen their strength in the early game start to be shown. They were affected a little bit by the professional scouts nerf, but overall they're still quite a strong civilization despite that. Obviously not sitting up in the A tier where they once were, but I think that's just come down to the way that players are focusing a little bit more on the second age now rather than the third age, and obviously with the Springalds being nerfed, it means they get dropped down as well. Next civilization in the B tier. There's quite a fast tier list, I gotta say. We're 4 minutes through this video already, and we're already up to our 5th civilization. Gonna be the English going into the B tier civilization. So these guys, once again, can be a little bit map dependent, but at the same time, they're a very solid all-round civ. There are civilizations that you would prefer to be playing on certain maps that you might get, but we are starting to see this sort of, I wouldn't necessarily say resurgence, but the one thing I'm noticing from a lot of these English players, they're playing out long H2 and they're being quite strong. So seeing openings like going into longbows, throwing in some spears, and then after about, 15, 16 minutes, beginning to add in men-at-arms and doing a big timing push with mass men-at-arms, mass longbows, battering rams. Incredibly strong, difficult to deal with, but at the same time, they do have their weaknesses. When it comes to booming, they're always going to be, I wouldn't say a little bit behind because they've got the King's Palace, but when it comes to the other civilizations, English rarely find that opportunity to be booming like the other civs do. So that's always something that I would consider. When you're playing as the English, they do have some bad matchups as well. But the next civilization in the B tier list is going to be the HRE, the Holy Roman Empire. So this civilization is it's great on some maps. They're similar to the Chinese. They're great on some maps, terrible on others. The Chinese a little bit better on your standard maps, whereas the Holy Roman Empire, I've been finding that they're incredibly strong on like Hill and Dale. It's just a map that is very, very good. King of the Hill, another great map for the HRE, just simply because they want to get into that castle age and they want to begin smashing out those knights, collecting those relics, and it's very rare that you see a Holy Roman Empire player opt to stay in Age 2 unless they're really being forced to. Obviously then looking to go up into the 4th age as well for Palace of Swabia, incredibly strong boom. This is a civilization that I feel like is 1 or 2 balance changes away from being S tier. It has the potential to be incredibly oppressive. And yeah, as I said, it has some good matchups, has some bad matchups, but typically it is a civilization that is, it's more suited to those closed off maps. But a civilization that is not suited to those closed off maps, the Mongols, S tier. So this civilization, I mean, it's been S tier now for how many months? Continues to sit up here. Obviously in the most recent patch it was nerfed down. We saw 2 different nerfs targeting the civilization. The first one was the reduction of 50 wood. The second one was the increase in outpost cost from 70 up to 100 wood. These were both targeted at the Mongol civilization. They also targeted professional scouts, which this civilization uses very effectively. And still we see the Mongols being incredibly strong. So this civilization's really just got everything. Aggression in the early ages, economy in the late stages of the game. The mid-game, it's got one of the strongest pushes with its landmarks. It's got incredible landmarks. Yam network, probably the best landmark there is in the game, or rather the Deer Stones, which provides the Yam network. Combine that with their Age 3 landmark, which is the Step Redoubt, increasing the gold gathered. Just another amazing landmark. It just synergizes very well with their playstyle. Going for full cavalry is a great option that they've got. Very easy to switch into mangonels or switch into archers if that's what they're potentially looking at. But yeah, this civilization, incredibly difficult to deal with. Also a massive threat on water as well. I'm wondering how this is going to change when animation cancelling gets fixed, because all 3 of these civilizations are civilizations that are very... they're going to animation cancel a lot. They typically make lancers, they make knights. That's these civilizations here. Compare it down to these civilizations and you see infantry, you see archers, you see a little bit of mix of everything, and you see basically nothing coming out of these guys. But these are all sort of knight civilizations which continue to see such strength. And the final civilization, the Delhi, as I mentioned earlier, we're not going to be seeing them in the C tier, the B tier, the D tier, or the A tier. They are an S tier civilization now. So this was something that was predicted by a lot of people. People suspected that this would, once you fix the bugs with Delhi, it's going to kick them up a notch. And that is exactly what's happened. So the Delhi are looking incredibly good. Now the fact that their spearmen are able to brace is really, really good. But also the fact that we've seen nerfs to the professional scout civilization has meant that Delhi sort of climbs up in a little bit of strength. The Delhi are a civilization that is just incredibly strong on almost all maps now. Hybrid maps especially, they are going to just dominate. It's almost impossible for you to be able to take the water off the Delhi, though we are seeing players learn how to adapt into that. So we're starting to see these openings where players are going for 5 or 6 scouts. It's absolutely ludicrous. This is something that Viper has done, and he sort of pioneered it. And now we've just seen other players just going for it absolutely out the wazoo. So that's one way to stop it, but other than that, it's very, very difficult to beat them on that maps. Also, on just your standard like Arabia maps, you're going up against Sanctity, which is difficult. 3 sacred sites for them to take. This civilization is in a really good spot, and if we could bring all other civilizations up to where Delhi is, then they'd be feeling amazing, because Delhi right now, it's a civilization that is just... it feels absolutely amazing to play this civilization. The big thing for me is their Age 3 timing push. They're also very difficult to deal with. I'm not sure how many of you guys have seen Salami playing the Delhi, but let's just say wow, they are frustrating. Stone walls absolutely everywhere. Stone towers absolutely everywhere. They're built up by, built by the spearmen, and then you're capturing the sacred sites behind it, and all the relics are getting taken. It's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy how strong they are. So now we'll have a look at the statistics which we're basing this off. So these are the statistics that we are basing it off right here. So it's a little bit difficult to read, but I'll go through it with you guys. So you've got the times that it's been picked, the civilization, the amount of mirrors, which are pretty much just going to ignore, and their wins, their losses, and most importantly, their win percentage. So for civilizations that are down the bottom, you see the Abbasid Dynasty. So as an example, I didn't put the Abbasid Dynasty in the C tier, I put them in the D tier. Now, it's important to note, I'm not basing this entirely off what happened in the Winter Championship, which was the S tier tournament that just finished. But it is largely based off that, because that is the professional level, that is the top level, that is sort of the echelon which we base everything off. And so they don't even get to sit in the C tier, they're in the D tier just because they're so far behind every other civilization. So that's them down there. The Delhi, you can see they're sitting up at 61% win rate, pretty close to the Mongols on 58%, or just shy of 58%. These guys have got pretty standard pick rates, but then you start to see civilizations like the French and the Rus with 53 and 54%. These guys are also picked a lot, which shows just how flexible they are. And then you sort of move down from there into the Chinese, which got a 45% win rate, the English 47%, and the HRE a 43% win rate, and then eventually down towards the Abbasid. But it definitely tells or paints a picture of the strength of the Abbasid and just their playstyle. I think a lot of people are baited into going for that early economic wing as an opening, and then falling into this 2TC trap, which is lovely, but at the same time, you really got to ask the question whether it's worth it or not. And obviously, it's not with that 21% win rate. So yeah, Abbasid not feeling the best, but I mean, Delhi, I think a lot of people will be surprised by Delhi, but at the same time, a lot of people won't be surprised by it. We did see this coming, just with how strong Delhi are on hybrid maps in particular. You know, once you fix up those bugs and you enable spearmen to build walls, and once your upgrades start not taking, 20 minutes to come through, the civilization's an absolute powerhouse. So that's the tier list. I'm going to leave a link in the description to this tier list if you want to make your own tier list. Make sure you leave any comments down below letting me know what you think. And most importantly, this is a subjective tier list. Yours is 100%, probably 99%, going to be different to mine. But that's exactly why it's a tier list, and that's why it's so subjective, just because it's based on our own biases, our own preferences, and yeah, our own perspective. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one.